Welcome back to Our Community. Susie Thomas visiting with Pat Kreider from the First Ladies Library. It's so interesting. We were talking about the women on the campaign trail. You know, the husband suddenly informs you he's going to be running for president. Then what if they win, for heaven's sakes? We talk about not signing up for something. Suddenly, a woman's got a job.
That's right.
And there's really nowhere to go to college to study how to be First Lady. Tell us a little bit, first of all, about the expectations and then how some of these women grew into that.
Well, the interesting thing is that there is no official role for First Ladies. They are not salaried. They are not paid in any way, shape, or form. They do have paid staff. And so, since there is no job description, each First Lady can go into the White House and they can create their own role. However, there is expectations. There is expectations now that they espouse causes, that they get involved. And as we've seen in recent past, if a First Lady becomes involved in an area that the public thinks they shouldn't, like Hillary Clinton with health care when the Clintons were in office, then all of a sudden the public comes out and said, hey, you know, we didn't elect you.
We didn't elect you.
That's right.
Yes.
So you find many First Ladies sticking to more traditional causes, but still they know that they have a voice. And they know that when they take on a cause, that cause gets attention. And so you see many First Ladies now looking at roles and causes involving women's rights, and not just in this country, but also internationally, like Laura Bush and the Afghan women.
Yes.
So it's a very important role, and it's one that does get attention, like Michelle Obama in her Let's Move cause. It's
probably a role that's morphed over the years as traditional women's roles have morphed over the years. I think of Lady Bird Johnson, and she was, I think, very involved with beautification as far as planting flowers in neighborhoods and so forth. That's pretty benign. You're not going to get in too much trouble with that. Jackie Kennedy, though, decided to completely redo the White House, and she raised a few eyebrows with her good taste, correct? Tell us a little bit about that.
So she knew that the White House needed to be renovated, and she went through warehouses and she found pieces that had been just stored away for years and years and years. But she did raise a lot of private money, and people didn't realize that. They thought that she was spending, public funds and tax dollars. And so there was controversy, but it went forward and it needed to happen. And when JFK was killed, Pat Nixon actually followed on and did a lot of the renovation work that Jackie Kennedy didn't have a lot of time to finish. So,
she wasn't in that house.
That's 3 years.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
What is life in the White House like? What do we know about life in the White House from what you have learned from these women?
Well, it's a fishbowl, and it's a very difficult life because you have no privacy. They do have their residence, and the access to the residence, the private residence, is limited to people, and that's really their only oasis, their only sanctuary. But you hear about First Ladies talking after the fact about sneaking out of the White House. Hillary Clinton did it. Laura Bush did it. They'd put a scarf around their head and put some raincoat on, and they'd go walking around the block. But something as benign as walking around the block becomes very, very difficult. Michelle Obama has said that when they leave the White House, one thing that she wants to be able to do is just go to Target and be a customer, be a shopper.
Good luck with that. Okay. Well, have any of them spoken about the challenges of raising family during their White House years?
Oh, many, many, many. First Ladies have had that challenge. And of course, when you have younger children, it's even more difficult. And so you have a situation that when Michelle Obama becomes First Lady and she has young daughters, she actually looked to Hillary Clinton and asked for some advice of how did you raise Chelsea. And Hillary Clinton had looked to Jackie Kennedy, who was in that same situation. And Jackie Kennedy, when she was in that situation, had looked to Eleanor Roosevelt, who had a family. So, there's that sisterhood, there's that sorority that it doesn't matter what party you're in, there is information that you
Yes.
can share to help each other. You know, how do you raise your children and protect them, but let them have a quasi normal life?
Yeah, that's got to be a challenge.
Challenge.
And that is, like you say, a sisterhood. There's a very, very small group.
yes.
And you can't let political
No.
ties pull you away
No.
from each other because they're your best friend,
No.
really. They're the ones who know what you're going
And
through.
they all have the same basic problems.
Exactly. And they're all women with kids when
Yes.
it comes down to it. We were speaking with Pat Kreider. She is executive director of the First Ladies Library. And so many interesting things, but of course, one of our favorite sons, William McKinley. We're back to talking about Ida McKinley, and what do we know about Ida? She really did have a privileged life and then a rough life.
Yes.
And I think of her as almost a tragic figure.
Yes. Ida's parents were very unusual for their time in that they both believed that girls should be educated as well as boys. And so Ida and her sister had very good education. They were educated first in Canton, they were educated in Cleveland, they were educated in New York and also in Pennsylvania. Their parents sent them on a grand tour of Europe, a 6-month grand tour of Europe in 1869, which was pretty much unheard of. Boys went on a grand tour,
Wow.
not girls. And then when Ida came back, her dad actually put her to work in his bank, and she was a cashier, and she filled in for him as manager when he was off with other duties. And it really raised eyebrows in Canton because they were a wealthy family, and that wasn't an acceptable occupation for a young woman. But Ida was very smart. When she went to school in Pennsylvania, her dad said, I don't want her to just have the traditional girls' education. I want her to have a practical education as well, and I want her to learn things like bookkeeping and math. And so she was very intelligent. She was very interested in politics. And then they have the tragedy with their 2 young girls dying, and her health took a turn for the worse.
Yes.
And the one thing that in today's research, we know that she had a form of epilepsy. In those days, epilepsy was seen as a mental illness. And so they felt that they needed to hide that from the public because the public would expect her to be in an asylum. And there was many rumors when he ran for president that Ida was an invalid and she couldn't fulfill her role. But that wasn't true. Ida went for years at a time with very good health, and then she would have some problems. And so they came out with campaign biographies about her, and she would be sitting on the front porch during the front porch campaign, never speaking, of course, but wanting to prove to people that, yes, she does have some health issues, but she absolutely wants to serve her role and is looking forward to doing that.
Wow. When a person tours the First Ladies Library, are they still met? Are these done in the first person still? I know often I've taken a tour and I'm greeted by a First Lady, and she
Right.
takes me around and tells me about her life.
Sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't have the opportunity to do that. So it's kind of a mixed bag if that happens or it doesn't happen.
Before we leave the Ida, I want to find out more about a June 8th event
Yes.
coming up.
June 8th is Ida's birthday, also Barbara Bush's birthday. But every year we celebrate Ida's birthday by having an open house. And this year it's a Wednesday, and we're actually going to start by going over to the McKinley Monument, and we're going to lay a bouquet of flowers at the tomb. And then we're going to come back, and both the Saxton McKinley House and the exhibit floor of the Education and Research Center are going to be open to the public from 10 to 4 for free. And sometime during that day, although the time isn't set yet, we're actually going to have a woman named Dr. Lauren Wright, and she's a White House historian, and she's going to come in and give a lecture, and that information will be up on our website.
That is so great. And that website is firstladies.org. Pretty easy. What do people seem to be most fascinated with about the First Ladies? I know when I go to these kinds of museums, I love seeing Ida's wedding gown whenever it's on display, or just different things like that. Does there seem to be any one particular article of clothing or book or pictures, photographs? any kind of trinket or something of these women that seem to really capture people's imagination?
People like to see the personal items. They like to see the dresses. They like to see the jewelry. They like to see the letters. Anything that came from that first lady that belonged to them personally. Since we're about the causes of first ladies, at first we kind of stayed away from the garments. But then we came to realize that it was important for an exhibit. It was important to have those on display. And in reality, clothing says something about a person. Everyone dresses differently, and it's part of their personality. It's part of their character. And so people are able to come in and see, a dress that was worn by Lady Bird Johnson or Rosalind Carter or, Martha Washington or, and they're able to kind of visualize then that woman in their time frame.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything from Martha Washington?
We actually do. We have the dresses that we have are reproductions, but we actually have a pair of slippers.
Oh,
like evening slippers that were owned by Martha Washington. Mm-hmm.
That is amazing. Mm-hmm. All right, we're speaking with Pat Kreider. It makes me want to just get down there again and see this. It's been a while. Pat Kreider is executive director of the First Ladies Museum, and we are swiftly running out of time. People are going to want to know how to tour it, how to get a chance to see it. How do we?
Okay, we have tours Tuesday through Saturday. Mm-hmm. And the tours of the house are guided. And so we have them several times a day. And you call. It's very, very highly recommended that you make a reservation. And the number is 330-452-0876, extension 320.
Okay.
And you make a reservation, and then you can come in for a tour. Tours last about an hour and a half. And again, you'll see both the Saxton McKinley House and the exhibit at the Education and Research Center. And then in the summer, June, July, and August, we also have tours in the afternoon on Sunday.
Oh, nice. Okay. That number again, 330-452-0876.
Extension 320.
Got it. All right. And large groups, small groups, what do you recommend?
The house is small, so we can only take about 15 people at a time, but we do take both individuals and we take group tours. And, we work with the group tour, and sometimes we have to split them up and send them a little at a time at the house, but whichever size group wants to come, we accept everyone. Mm-hmm.
You are obviously somebody who just loves this. You were a volunteer first and worked your way into executive director.
Yes.
What do you love most about it, Pat?
I love most that you learn something new all the time. Every time we have a new exhibit, you learn something new about a first lady that you didn't know that much about. So it's always different, and it's always going to be different. If you're at a presidential library, you have one president. We have many first ladies and their families. Right. And so it's always different, and there's always new ground that's being broken. And you can compare and contrast, and it's just very fun and very interesting.
Well, I can't wait to get back over there. Thank you so much, Pat Kreider, for joining us on Our Community.